Müsaadenizle sahneye Amerika'dan bizleri kırmayıp gelen Lirik'imi davet etmek istiyorum. I would like to introduce you, Larry.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Today we're talking about my favorite growth marketing hacks for 2019 and beyond. And before getting into all the details, I wanted to just introduce myself briefly. I am a founder and CEO of MobileMonkey. It's a new company in the Facebook Messenger marketing space. I have a kid, 2 kids actually. One of them is pretty new, 3 months old. And I live in Boston. I'm slightly obsessed with unicorns. And I started a company called WordStream in 2008. I had literally started it out of a bakery because it had free Wi-Fi and free rent and unlimited Diet Coke refills. I was kind of like you guys. I was an internet marketer. I grew that business over the last 10 years to become the world's largest provider of pay-per-click advertising software, managing over $1 billion of ad spend for tens of thousands of customers worldwide. The company was actually acquired in July. I sold the business for $150 million. You know, it was pretty recent. So sometimes people ask me, what's it like to sell a business for $150 million? Honestly, it's a bit of a relief because I spent the last 10 years teaching people how to grow their businesses and how to do better marketing, and it would have been very embarrassing if the company did very badly. So kind of a relief. I would have had to become one of those speakers who talks about how not to grow a business, which is kind of not very interesting for me. That's a joke. Okay. So the business, WordStream, I was able to grow it, almost doubling the revenues every single year for 7 years. So this year it'll do about $55 million in revenues, $16 million in profits. And I think that's a very impressive growth because that's actually the topic of my presentation today, which is how do marketers how can they double or achieve this kind of growth consistently for 7 years, assuming no major changes to your product or your target market, okay? And so basically the big secret to unleashing a lot of this growth, in my experience, was just finding the next big growth marketing channels and being present and exploiting those channels early on in order to extract a lot of value out of them. I think one of the biggest mistakes people can make is they get very attached to certain marketing channels. What I ended up doing was I kind of shifted the tactics every year or two. So early on, I was focused a lot on SEO, blogging, and AdWords. Later we did a lot on infographics and public relations stunts and organic Twitter and Facebook and so on. And we just kept on changing the tactics. The strategy is still the same, like the target market, the messaging, the product. That was pretty similar. But what changed was the tactics that we used to grow the business were always evolving. The question today I have is what are the areas that you should be focusing for growth with the most leverage in 2019 and beyond. And I just want to give you a couple examples of what I'm talking about. On Twitter, my Twitter account gets 15.1 million views every month. And the reason why that was possible is because I started doing Twitter back in 2008, back when it was very new, and I was featured as one of the people to follow in the marketing category. And so that allowed me to generate hundreds of thousands of followers, which meant it was very easy to do that. And now there's just a lot of people following me, and so it just continues to grow. It would be very difficult to do this today because it's so noisy on Twitter. Another crazy example is like just unicorns, and I'm kind of joking here, but they've become very, very popular in the last year or two. But I've been talking about unicorns for about 10 years now. So every time they generate like a unicorn emoji or unicorn cappuccino, it helps me personally a great deal. That's just a joke. Okay, so let's get to the kind of the main point here. Where should we be focusing in for 2019 and beyond? There's just two areas, guys. This is what I'm doing personally. I'm focusing a lot on this crazy hack to defeat machine learning in order to improve your SEO, pay-per-click advertising, and social media marketing. And I'm also focusing a lot on messenger marketing. So that's like chat marketing, sending out. It's kind of like a replacement for email, using WhatsApp or Messenger. So we'll talk about those two topics today. So part one, I wanted to talk about my crazy hack for defeating machine learning algorithms, which have become really adopted by all of the platforms that send traffic to your website, including Google, Facebook ads, Google ads, etc. So the bad news, guys, is that 97% of your marketing efforts go nowhere. They produce no results. And I'm not criticizing you. This is actually from my own experience. Last year, I wrote 300 blog posts on how to do marketing. 8 of those articles did fantastically well. The remaining 292 went nowhere. There were a bunch of donkeys. Just 8 of them were unicorns. 98% of them were donkeys. And the reason is because Google and Facebook have dramatically changed their algorithms over the last 3 years on how they reward traffic to different companies. They are basically employing machine learning algorithms that reward unicorns and punish donkeys. Let me give you an example of this. So Inc. magazine is a popular website in America for entrepreneurship. And if you look at their top performing articles for the last three years in August, what you can see is that in 2015, it was like communism. Like all of the articles, the top articles, had kind of similar number of page views. Okay, in 2016, the top 3 articles started to generate significantly more traffic than everything else. And then by August of 2017, the top 2 articles generated more traffic than all the other top articles combined. So this is what we're seeing, where the winner is becoming increasingly winner take all. Similarly, it's not just about traffic to your site, it's also in social sharing. So again, Facebook and Twitter, they're now using machine learning algorithms so that, back in 2015, if you looked at what were the most popular articles, it was very similar, communism, everyone gets the same number of shares. But in 2016, 2017, what you'll find is that, the top 2 articles will generate more shares than everything else combined. And so the visibility in search engines and in social media is becoming less equal and more distributed towards just a small number of winning campaigns. And so because of this shift, the number one tip that I can give you today is to shift your content marketing strategies to be a little bit more aligned with these new Google and Facebook algorithms. We need to exploit the loopholes and the weaknesses in these algorithms in order to get better performance. And so basically, in order to do this, we need to understand the difference between donkeys and unicorns. So donkeys and unicorns, it's very difficult to tell the difference, but the easiest way to figure out if something is a donkey or a unicorn is to try it out. Okay, so if you were to post, this is a graph of posting 129 status updates to a Facebook page. And most of the, like 97% of the stuff that I post to this Facebook page are donkeys. They have very, very low click-through rates of 0 to 1%, or 1 to 2%, or 2 to 3%. But 3 of these 129 updates are unicorns because they have click-through rates of 10% or higher. Okay, so basically, the idea here is that you have to audition the different campaigns and see which ones are working, and then really focus on the few that are working. It's the same thing in blog content. When you're doing your blogging, what you'll notice in Google Analytics is that a small number of stories, typically 10% of your blog content, will generate 50 or 60 or 70% of the traffic. And so sometimes when I talk about unicorns, people think that I'm suggesting that you try to create a viral hit. Okay, a viral hit is extremely difficult to create. Like a Gangnam Style had 2 or 3 billion views. The probability of doing this is like 1 in 100 million or something like that. This is very, very hard to do. So I'm not suggesting that you try to create viral hits. What I'm saying is focus on your unicorns. Everybody here, no matter how crappy your content marketing is, 3% of those campaigns will be doing less crappy than everything else. Do you see what I'm saying? So you're just focusing on your top 3% because those are the ones that are most likely to get the most value out of Google and Facebook. So everyone has unicorns. It's just the top 3% of your campaigns. So how do we find the unicorns and the donkeys? It's all about the click-through rates, okay? Because machine learning algorithms use click-through rates to determine whether or not something is a donkey or a unicorn. Think about AdWords. So in AdWords, that's my area of expertise. AdWords has always been about machine learning. So when it came out in 2003, there was no link graph. There was no trust and authority signals. This was entirely a machine learning-based system that auditioned your ads and determined quality based on click-through rates. So the higher the click-through rates, the less you pay for those clicks. The lower the click-through rates, the more you pay. It's the same thing in Facebook and Twitter ads, where if you're promoting posts with 1% click-through rates, those could be $3, $4, $5 per click. If you're promoting posts with 50% click-through rates, the costs will go down by 1,000 times. So those concepts have been kind of used by search engines and social media companies in other channels like organic search. So for example, what I'm finding is that click-through rates have a dramatic impact on search engine, like organic search results. So for example, this is not just a theory. I've done a lot of experimentation here. What I did was I was looking at the click-through rates and the rankings for 1,000 keywords, but looking at those click-through rates and rankings every few months, every 3 months, over a period of time. And what I found was that the listings that had above average, above expected click-through rates were actually rising over time. So like if you look at May, June, September, the ones that had more higher than expected click-through rates were rising, and of course the listings that had lower click-through rates were actually falling. That's because that's how machine learning works. It doesn't make one big change all right away, like Panda or Penguin, how like one day everything changed. Machine learning kind of learns slowly and iteratively every minute, and so it's making millions and millions of changes to every single day, and that's the result. It's the same thing with the Facebook newsfeed algorithm. So what I mean by this is that if you engage with the content that you're seeing in the newsfeed algorithm, Facebook is more likely to show you that kind of content in the future. If you don't engage with it, you're not likely to see this kind of stuff in the future. So of course, click-through rate matters a great deal for social media success. The funny thing about this click-through rates theory is that it has a profound impact on conversion rates. Okay, so it's not just about driving more traffic to your site through search and social. What I've found is that if you can raise the click-through rates of your emails or your ads or of your Google organic search listings, what we find is that by looking at e-commerce stores and looking at their data, what we find is that if you can increase the click-through rate from whatever is driving traffic to your site, you will see a higher conversion rate associated with that click. And the reason is because if you can get people excited about visiting your site for some reason, that excitement will carry through to a purchase or a sale or a lead. So click-through rates, it's more traffic, it's more conversions. So when it comes to finding your unicorn content and your campaigns, the one thing that the unicorns have in common is whether we're talking SEO or ads or conversion rate optimization or paid social, the thing they all have in common is unusually high click-through rates, high engagement rates. And the reason is because it's not a coincidence. It's because that's the signal being used by all those platforms to determine whether or not we should have more or less exposure either in the search results page or in the Facebook newsfeed. And so hopefully I've convinced you that click-through rates matter a great deal. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some techniques for donkey and unicorn detection. So the problem with marketers is they're very biased. They think that their shit doesn't stink. They think that everything they work on is a unicorn, even though most of the times it's not a unicorn. 97% of the time it's a donkey. And so I think the problem is they suffer from donkey delusional disorder. It's a terrible, terrible medical condition where they see unicorns, but really it was something else, like a rhinoceros or a triceratops or a mosquito. And so these are jokes, guys. So I've created a very simple donkey detector for you to discern or to determine whether or not your marketing campaign, your ad, your email copy, your blog post, is this a donkey or is this a unicorn, okay? So it's actually a pyramid scheme. It's very easy to use. All you need to do is produce a lot of content or a lot of campaigns and try them out. You have to audition and test them out. And you have to measure the engagement rates of those campaigns. So maybe it's like 100 Facebook status updates or 100 blog posts or 100 tweets or 100 emails. Just create a lot of campaigns, measure the engagement rates. The next thing you have to do is you have to kill the donkeys. Okay, so what do I mean by killing the donkeys? It means like if you have an email campaign with like an open rate of 5%, okay, that's a donkey. But some marketers, they think that, oh, well, what if we bought another list and sent it out to another 20,000 more people? Maybe it'll improve, right? No, it's not going to improve. If it didn't do well on the first 100 or first 1,000 emails that you sent it to, it's not going to improve. And this is the biggest mistake that marketers make. They should actually just forget about it and move on to some other idea. The other thing that marketers do wrong is that when they do find a unicorn, they don't fully appreciate how valuable that unicorn is. And so they don't fully realize the value of that unicorn. When you find one, it's so beautiful that you should do something called sounding the unicorn alert. We will talk about that in just a second. But basically, when it comes to determining what's a good engagement rate for these different campaigns, keep in mind the difference between a high engagement unicorn and a low engagement donkey. It's a relative differentiation. Okay, so if what you do is you take all of your campaigns, like all the emails that you sent out, you rank them based on the click-through rates, and you see how 2 of them have like 30 or 45% open rates, but a lot of them have like 10 or 20% open rates. You kind of organize them in descending order of click-through rates, and the unicorns are the top 2% at the top. Those are the ones that you should be spending more time on, and perhaps sending these out to a bigger list. So it's the same thing with the offers on your websites. So a lot of companies, they have like hundreds of different offers, like sign up for this white paper or sign up for this free trial. And the funny thing about these offers is that the average conversion rate for these offers are around 2.35%. But if you can get a really great offer that is amazingly differentiated and resonates with your target market, the top 10% of offers actually have conversion rates of 11% or more. So the top 10% of offers convert at 5 times the average conversion rate of all the other donkeys. And so the strategy here is that you should be eliminating most of your offers. Like if you have like 100 offers on your website and they're all donkeys, just get rid of 99 of them and just keep the one that's working. And so the unicorn marketing power law just says that 85% of the value from your marketing campaigns will come from a very, very small percentage of the work that you do in marketing. So it's not just about creating better results. It's also about saving time, because you want to spend less time focusing on the donkeys. And so just to summarize here, we should be focusing on the top 3% of our marketing campaigns. Why? Because those are the campaigns that are going to be recognized and rewarded by Google and Facebook, and those are the ones that are going to convert like crazy. We've talked about ways to identify them. Now let's talk a little bit about something called sounding the unicorn alert and making unicorn babies. Okay. So, what does this mean? Like, I just made this up. Don't worry if you haven't heard about it. So, remember how I said at the beginning of the presentation that I wrote 300 articles last year? 8 of them did fantastically well. 292 did terribly. Okay. This was one of my unicorns that did fantastically well. It was an article called 5 Big Changes Coming to AdWords, Everything You Need to Know. This article generated over 100,000 visits to my site, which is crazy. My average article only does maybe 2,000 or 3,000 views. Okay, this did 100,000. It was generating tens of thousands of shares on social media. My typical article maybe does like 500 shares. Okay, so this was off the chart. It's generating so much more engagement than anything else. That this is a unicorn. And so what a lot of marketers do when they find the unicorn is they say, "Congratulations, we found a unicorn." And then what they do is they look at their marketing calendar and they say, "Oh, well, it's October. So we should write something about Halloween, or we should write something about, I don't know, it's like something seasonal." And this is crazy, because you just found a unicorn, and that's so valuable. What you should really do instead is you should throw away the content calendar and just forget about everything that you had planned and make a change in that plan. And sound the unicorn alert. Sounding the unicorn alert, it's just like this little lamp that you put on your office. It looks like the bat sign, but it's a unicorn. And basically, we need to make these unicorn babies, okay? So what's making a unicorn baby? A unicorn baby just says that if this topic did so well in one format, such as a blog post on your own website, it's going to do super well elsewhere in other formats. So for example, I created a contributed blog post for Search Engine Journal on the exact same topic. This is the same article, okay? It's just a slightly different title. It was their #1 article for that month. You can see there it says it has 2,300 shares. Their average number of shares is only like 200. It has 12,000 reads. Their average number of reads per article is only 500. So this is an incredible story. It did fantastically well, and I knew it was going to do well because it did well on my own blog. Another form of unicorn baby making is to do a follow-up story. A follow-up story is just to take this exact same topic, but to cover it in more detail. So this is one of my unicorn babies. It's 10 things you need to know about the new Google Maps local search ads. Okay. So what I did was I took 5 unicorn babies, 1 in-depth article for each of the new features. And what we found was that every one of these unicorn babies actually generated the same or more traffic than the original unicorn. You know who does this really well? CNN. If an airplane crashes somewhere, CNN stops reporting on everything else, and they just talk about airplanes for like 2 or 3 weeks. They interview all sorts of experts, witnesses and pilots and psychics, and it's pretty crazy. But they do this, and it gets really, really good ratings. You should be taking a similar approach to your marketing efforts. Same thing goes with infographics and videos. I love infographics and videos, but the problem is that they take more time and money to produce. So if you're going to spend money to produce some video or graphics, make sure it's a proven topic. Make sure that it's a topic that you know has already done extremely well, so that you remove the risk of having invested the money to create this asset in the first place. This is an example of unicorn infographification, turning unicorn content into infographics. I had the #2 article in Search Engine Land on how to raise your click-through rates. And I knew that it was going to be do very well because it was just an infographic over there, an infographic that was just a visual representation of one of my top blog posts for the year on my own personal blog. So if it did well in one place, of course it's going to do well in an infographic. Same thing with conference presentations and webinars. When I found that unicorn, I told my team, we need to do a webinar. We'll use the same topic. We'll use this exact same title as the blog post. We won't change anything at all. My team thought I was crazy. We just created the same webinar and had a registration form. We generated 5,000 registrations for that webinar. Why 5,000? Because GoToMeeting has a limit of 5,000 registrations. I don't know why. I think it breaks after 5,000. It was so fantastic. Like, our typical webinars only do like 500 or 600 registrations. This webinar was so great that I told my team, let's do it again tomorrow. They thought I was on drugs. They were saying, like, shouldn't you change the title, or shouldn't you add new material, or maybe add some additional content? I'm like, nope. But that's what marketers do. They try to turn their unicorns into donkeys. I want to keep the unicorn, like, it's special as it is. Let's not make any changes to it, okay? So we ran the same unicorn the same webinar the next day. It got another 5,000 registrations. You see what I'm saying? And so we continued to do this 5 times, the same topic, but with slightly changing, like maybe we talked about some of the new features a little more, but it was essentially the same topic. That one unicorn and its 4 unicorn babies generated 3,300, it generated 71% of all of the leads for all of our webinar efforts for that year. So we do about 26 webinars per year. One of them generated 71% of the value, and it was just this one that we repeated 5 times. The last thing that you should do with your unicorns is you should boost them with social media ad spending, because if you have a very, very high click-through rate, the cost to advertise these campaigns on social media is extremely low. So that campaign I amplified on Facebook ads. As you can see, it has a relevancy score of 7, and so the cost per click is around 1 penny. That's a pretty good deal. Sometimes I'm paying like $3, $4, $5 for these clicks, and this was for 1 penny. Same thing with Twitter ads. It had it had around a 6 or 7% click-through rate, and so I was paying 6 cents for those clicks, which is a very good deal. One of the important concepts that you should have in your company is something called a unicorn slush fund, okay? A unicorn slush fund is the opposite of a monthly PPC marketing budget. A monthly PPC marketing budget says, like, maybe you have $1,000 to spend on ads, and you have to spend it every month, and if you don't spend it this month, there's no rollover. You can't use that budget next month because you have to spend it or else. I think that's like so stupid, okay? What you should do instead of a monthly pay-per-click advertising budget is you should have a more flexible unicorn slush fund. The unicorn slush fund is just allowing you to spend nothing if you choose to, like, don't spend money promoting donkeys. You know, they just won't work. So just wait. Just accumulate your budget for like month after month after month until you find the unicorn. But when you do find the unicorn, go all in on that one campaign. Deploy all of your ad budget for the year on that one campaign. And this is how you can generate 30, 40, 50 times more return on investment from pay-per-click advertising on social and search, you know, by just being a little bit more flexible on how you deploy the budgets. Guys, I want to talk a little bit about this crazy hack for doubling and tripling your click-through rates. Like, so that you know, obviously now I've convinced you, hopefully, that click-through rates are very, very important. I wanted to give you my favorite hack for improving the click-through rates, not just by a little bit, but by 200 to 300%. And so this hack is based on some research that I did, which compared the click-through rates of new versus repeating visitors. So I looked at what's the click-through rate of somebody who visits my site if they've been here before. So that means that they are familiar with my brand and have more affinity towards me and my company, versus a new visitor who's never heard of me before and has never visited my site before, and thus has less brand affinity. Okay, so what's the difference in click-through rates between new and repeat visitors? It's enormous, okay? People who have visited your site before are 2 to 3 times more likely to click on your emails, your ads, your Facebook listings. And we see this across every vertical, okay? It's not just the click-through rates, it's also the conversion rates, that they are 2 to 3 times more likely to buy whatever it is you are selling if they are familiar with you, okay? So the hack, if you want to really, really increase your click-through rates, is we need to connect with these customers earlier in the funnel in order for them to create some additional brand affinity, so that when they do decide to buy whatever it is you're selling, they'll remember you and will click on your stuff with 2 to 3 times more higher likelihood. And so the way that I do this is I do an audience analysis. I try to figure out what are the interests of the target market that I'm serving, and what are their broader, more generic interests that are outside of the direct interest of what you are selling, okay? So how do you do this? In Google Analytics, you can use User Explorer to gain insights into what TV shows they watch, or what are their you know, demographics and behaviors. You can get this same data in Facebook User Explorer, the audience analytics. You can even get this data in Twitter analytics. So Twitter has audience insights. So I just want to show you this one, for example. What this says is that 70% of the million people who follow me on Twitter are very, very interested in entrepreneurship. Okay, so I don't sell entrepreneurship products. I sell, you know, pay-per-click advertising solutions and mobile messaging solutions, okay? But 70% of my audience is interested in entrepreneurship. And so what I do is I create and pay to promote content that is outside of the pay-per-click niche, okay? Like this is an article on Medium on entrepreneurship. And I will pay to promote this on Facebook to people who are interested in entrepreneurship so that it gets distribution. I spend 20% of my marketing budget on promoting stuff that has nothing to do with the products and services that I'm selling. And the reason to do this is just trying to build awareness earlier in the funnel so that later the click-through rates are higher, because that's how marketing really works. You know, you need to come up with some kind of a creative, inspirational, memorable campaign that you put in front of your target audience, so people who meet your target audience but perhaps aren't yet in the market to buy your products right at this moment, we need to then bias them, like so make them feel happy thoughts towards your brand. They'll see your content, and they might not buy your stuff right away, but later when the need arises, they'll remember you and will buy your stuff. And the greatest thing about this strategy is that there's a virtuous cycle. So if you can raise your click-through rates, you'll actually get more clicks and conversions. If you get more clicks and conversions, you'll generate more brand affinity. If you generate more brand affinity, you'll get more clicks and conversions, and so on. So this is the strategy that I employ for growing my business. I just wanted to talk briefly about this other hack. It's Facebook Messenger and chatbot marketing, okay? Because this is an incredible emerging channel that you need to be thinking about this year or next year. The reason why I'm so excited about Messenger marketing is because there's more daily active users on messaging platforms than social media platforms, okay? Less than 1% of businesses are doing any marketing on messaging platforms like Messenger. There's 1.3 billion daily active users on Messenger, and the engagement rates, the open rates, the read rates, the click rates on Messenger are enormously higher than what you can see in email marketing or in Facebook marketing by like 10 to 80 times. So the question is, how do marketers take advantage of this exciting new emerging channel of messaging, and how do you use this to grow your business? Basically, you should think of messaging as kind of the next email, like a replacement or an augmentation of email marketing. You can use messaging to do things like surveys, but instead of having them do a survey in some clunky website on their mobile phone, you can actually take the survey in the chat. You can ask them questions and they can respond to them in chat. Same thing with if you're doing webinars, you can take the registration in chat, and you can send out push notifications, the day before or 15 minutes before the event to remind them to show up for that event. It'll actually double the attendee rate. And all the things that you do in email marketing, like drip campaigns, like sequences of emails over time, you can do this through chat marketing. So I personally think that messaging, including WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, etc., I think this is going to be like the holy grail for growth marketers for the next 3 to 5 years, because it's like an entirely new channel that has yet to be exploited by marketers. So how do you do this? Well, with tools like MobileMonkey and other tools, you can. It's a little bit like MailChimp. You can import all of your Facebook contacts, okay, and you can then chat blast the content to those contact lists. So you can create, just like how you can create an email, you can create content visually and send that content out to your Facebook chat subscribers in a chat blast. This is chat blasting, where you just select some content, select an audience to send it to, and then you send it. It's like email marketing, except it's way better. You're sending push notifications to people's phones, and they can engage with this content. So in email, you can't respond to the email, okay? But in chat, you can ask people follow-up questions, like sign me up for this event. You press the button, and you can continue to engage with them through chat. So this is a funny example. Whenever I do a blog post, I not only send it out by email to my subscribers, I also send it out via chat. Okay, I call this blog blasting, and Neil Patel is one of my subscribers. I don't know why, but I do know that he reads all of my blogs because you can see his little avatar at the bottom there. So it's working. And now a lot of you might be thinking, is this spam? Should I really be blog blasting? Well, I don't think that it's spam. I think this is very valuable. And the reason is I have proof. I have data. I'm going to share something very personal. This is my open rates for my email campaigns and for my chat campaigns. Okay, notice how my email campaigns have 20% open rates. That's amazingly good. Like the average is around 5 to 10. So I've somehow been able to have a 20% open rate and a 1% click-through rate, which is considered very high. My chat campaigns, which are sending out the same information essentially, generate 60% open rates and 10 to 20% click rates. So the engagement rate on chat is somewhere around 60 to 100 times better than an email. That's crazy. So my point is, this is not spam. If it's spam, why are so many people opening it and reading it and clicking on it? Because that, if it was spam, they would ignore it, right? Or they would block you. So I think it's very interesting. I think it's very valuable. And it's less spammy than email, because you can't just buy a list of chat contacts to blast your content to. They have to message you first. Okay, and when a user says they want to unsubscribe, you can't send them messages anymore because Facebook won't allow you to. And the content that you can send is more dynamic and interactive than anything you can do through email. This is an example of a conversation that's happening in my chatbot, where I'm asking people to register for something, okay? This is a totally automated conversation. They're not talking to a human being. How do you do this? Well, you just use these chatbot builders like MobileMonkey. You visually create these flows. Like here, this is called static content because it's just images and text that's static. It doesn't change. But what you can do is you can layer in dynamic content, so multiple choice questions and user inputs, just like how in websites you can ask people, like on a form, like what's your name, what's your email, what's your phone number, that kind of thing. You can do this in chat. And so when you add that into the experience, it looks like this here, okay? You can ask and answer and save the responses from the user. And the reason why you do this is for segmentation. So if I ask you, are you an agency marketer or an in-house marketer? The value of doing this is that I can then save this data and apply segmentation. If they say they're an agency, maybe the next question is, how many clients do you manage? If they say that they're an in-house marketer, maybe the next question is, what's the primary purpose of your marketing efforts? Is it e-commerce? Is it lead generation, etc.? So do you see how this is more relevant and more personalized than email? The other thing that you can do is that once people answer questions about themselves, like they reveal like that they work at an agency, you can create an audience, a custom audience of all the people who said they were agency workers, like people who work at agencies. And then you can create customized lists and create chat blasts that are specifically targeted to those people. So this is an example of an actual chat blast that I did to agency marketers that had an 85% open rate. That's crazy. Like email is like 5%, okay? The reason is because this is extremely targeted and extremely relevant for this particular audience. Another great thing about chat marketing is it's mobile friendly. Facebook already has all your location, email, phone number, address, etc. So what you can do is you can pre-populate buttons that already have the user's information, and when they press the button, it releases that information to you. That's much easier for users on mobile to be able to fill out information by clicking one button than it is to try to type it out manually. You can add artificial intelligence to your chat experiences. So this is an example of an artificial intelligence bot. It's saying, how can I help you today? But there's no buttons. It doesn't really say what to do. You can type whatever you want. How do you do this? Basically what you do is when you're creating your chat content, you come up with keywords that are related to that chat content. So for example, we were creating a webinar sign-up page. So let's tag some keywords like register for the webinar or today's webinar. So it's kind of like in AdWords how you have an ad and then you come up with a list of keywords to trigger that ad, okay? And so then what happens is that when a user asks a question to the chatbot will analyze the intent of what the user was searching for. It will then look at the content that you've created to see if there's a match between what the user was asking for and what content you have. And if there's a match, it'll serve the correct content to the user, okay? So essentially, what happens is that every time the chatbot gets stumped, every time the chatbot gets confused by a question that it cannot answer because there was no content in place, you can review unanswered questions. So you can review all the questions that your chatbot could not answer and create new content so that the next time somebody asks, like, what are your hours or what's your return policy, those questions can be answered by the content that you create. So it's a little bit like training a personal assistant or someone who can automatically answer more and more questions automatically over time. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a few tips on how to grow your Chat Blast contact list, right? Because it's not very fun to do messenger marketing if you don't have a huge contact list. So in the olden days of marketing, we marketers used to create these things called landing pages, where we would ask for email addresses. We would drive traffic to these landing pages with SEO and AdWords so that we could collect emails, so that we could spam them, right? Well, that doesn't work anymore because the open rates are so low. 5 to 7 years ago, Facebook got really popular because you could get people to like your page, and then you could spam them with your content, because if they were subscribing to your page, then your page updates would show up in their feed. Unfortunately, this doesn't work anymore. So there's a new game in town. Now, in 2019, it's ridiculous that we have to keep jumping through these hoops, but you just have to play the game, okay? Basically, the goal today is to get people to message your business so that they've opted into receiving future communications from you. You can respond to those messages, okay? How do you do this? Well, you're not just waiting for people to message your page. This will take forever. If you just wait for this to happen, maybe you'll generate 5 contacts a day or 1. That's terrible. What you should do is you should be attaching Facebook comment guards, autoresponders to your Facebook posts, so that people who comment on your posts get private replies through Messenger. Okay, so anyone who comments on one of your posts becomes a subscriber. This is an example of one of these comment guards that I created. It was an article called Goodbye Facebook Newsfeed. It had 714 comments. Okay, the reason is because everyone was mad and they had an opinion. They wanted to comment on this thing. Okay, so this is comment bait. And so what I did is then I responded to users who commented on this post with an offer saying, would you like to learn the tricks on how to raise your Facebook organic reach with these new algorithm changes? And a lot of people said yes, and those people became subscribers to my chat list. This is another funny example. It's a riddle. It's the battle of the English and the math. One rabbit saw 6 elephants while going to the river. Every elephant saw 2 monkeys. Every monkey has 2 parrots in their head. How many animals are going to the river? Okay, this is ridiculous. Well, what I asked my fans was, like, if you put your guess in the comments, I will send you the correct answer as well as an explanation through Messenger, okay? So you can, basically, using this technology, you should be changing how you do social media. Instead of just putting blog posts and announcing things, you should be asking questions and trying to get more feedback from them so that you can send them some follow-up material. Like if you have a new ebook for your business, just say, hey, do you want this new ebook, this new guide on how to do, something? If you want, just type a comment and send it to me, and I'll send you the PDF via Messenger. Okay? The great thing about this strategy is that if people start commenting on your posts, it'll actually increase the visibility of the post, because that's how that whole click-through rate of machine learning works. It's very easy to defeat these algorithms if you understand how they work. So how do you set up these comment guards? You just choose what content you want to send to a user. You specify a frequency limit, and then you choose which posts to apply the autoresponders to, either a specific post or all of the posts in your page. There's a couple other tricks to getting a lot of subscribers. One of them is called a send to messenger button. So this is a replacement for legacy landing pages. So, in the olden days, we had these stupid landing pages where you had to fill out all your information manually. But today, you can just replace that with a single button. And if they press that blue button, all of the Facebook information, their name, last name, profile photo, location, language, gender, and messaging permissions gets sent to your business automatically. And so this is like a much better user experience, and you're collecting much more valuable information, messaging permissions, because that has a much higher open rate than email. How do you do this? You just copy some code and put it on your website, and that's how that works. Another thing you can do is you can install a messenger chat on your website. So this chat is unique. It's not like those other stupid chat windows that are anonymous, where you're chatting with someone and you don't know who it is. Okay, this chat is being routed through Messenger. So if they say hello, they've become a subscriber, and you get all of their contact information as well as messaging permissions. So this is very valuable a way to grow your list. And a final way is to just optionally ask people if they want to be added to your messenger list in every place where you're asking for emails. Okay, and lastly, I often will link to my chat bot from other campaigns, like email campaigns, saying like, "Hey, email sucks. Let's connect on Messenger." Okay. I still do email, though. The last thing that I do is Facebook Messenger ads. Okay, this is the last one. I spent the last 5 years talking about Facebook ads and how great they are. Unfortunately, Facebook has really been raising the prices a lot. In fact, the prices today are about 100 times more expensive than they were 5 years ago, and this makes me want to puke. And I actually don't do very much Facebook ads anymore for my business because the costs are too high. But I do use this format called Send to Messenger ad, because the interesting thing about this is that anyone who clicks that button becomes a chat subscriber. Okay, so this is kind of like a like ad from before. And it's kind of like having an ad that converts at 100%, because everyone who clicks Send Message becomes a contact. And so instead of having a 2% conversion rate where you pay for $5 for a click to your website and maybe 2% of those visitors will convert into a sale, what I do is I'll just do a messenger ad, and anyone who clicks becomes my contact, and I can nurture them that way. So in my own business, I'm able to generate leads for $3 to $5 per lead. When I was using just regular Facebook ads, it was $300 to $500 per lead. So it's about 100 times cheaper. So that's all I wanted to talk about chatbot marketing. Basically, my key takeaway here is that it's a really powerful new technology for top of the funnel lead generation, marketing automation, lead qualification, online advertising, landing pages that you should be thinking about. Even if basically there's a big communication shift that's well underway. People overwhelmingly prefer communicating on messaging platforms more so than email and social media combined. This is a trend that's been going on for many years now. We haven't seen this trend since 25 years ago, when email overtook phone calls as the primary, preferred way of communication. So all I'm saying is that, next year, more messaging platforms are opening up their platform: WhatsApp, Instagram, Apple, Android, and so this is something that you should look into. So in summary, guys, this is my top areas to focus on. The strategies are the same. Like just, I'm not talking about changing your product or your positioning or anything. I'm just saying like how you communicate that to your customers. You should be evolving. One is using Messenger, and the other is through the optimization of click-through rates and engagement rates. You can get this presentation through Messenger. If you go to if you go to this link, the bot will send you the PDF file, but you will be added to my contact list. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Actually, we do have a lot of questions for you, but I know you have a flight, so I have only one question. I will just tell you. We want to ask you that, how do you measure the correctness of your chatbot? For example, you are creating lots of messages, I know, but do you think it's always serves correctly to the people you would like to chat? Or how do you measure it? Do you have it?
Oh, you know, it's such a new technology. I think you manually have to review the chat transcripts and kind of see, like when you first set up your chatbot, you'll be so excited when somebody comes in and asks 5 questions and you answer all 5 questions correctly. Like it feels so great, but it takes a little while. You'll have to come up with a lot of content, and then for the first few months, you'll just have to read through the emails. It's almost like you hired a new employee, and you want to kind of check their work while they're training, and then when you feel confident, you don't have to read it anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much again.
Thanks.